sitting in my office. I should be doing homework. I'm currently in graduate school, and I also work full time, and I also teach part time at a local college. And so, when I say I should be doing homework, I've got some time before I go into work at 2 o'clock this afternoon. And my plan had been to spend that time working on a paper that is due at the end of the week, in addition to my regular coursework, my regular class load. I give you that introduction in an effort to try to introduce myself. I created this YouTube channel for one purpose, really. I am frustrated with the direction that the world is going, and I know why the world is struggling. That is a bold statement. It's an exceptionally bold statement. I understand it. I've introduced 2 videos already. One was entitled It's Just a Pencil, the other, Darkness Shall Flee. And the intention of these videos was to begin to introduce some concepts based on truth. And my intention is to publicly declare that truth exists, that it is present, that it is real, that it is discernible, that it is something that we, as the human species, and notice I didn't say man, I didn't say woman, I didn't say black, white, yellow, pink, or otherwise. I didn't say anything about sexual orientation. I said nothing about religion. I said humankind. Because there are things in this world that we have in common. And I believe that one of the reasons why we struggle so much is that we focus far too much on what makes us different rather than that what makes us the same. This video is unscripted. This video is straight from my heart. This video is an attempt to express to you a need to do something different than what we've been doing. Truth is real. Truth is discernible. Truth surrounds us. Nobody owns it. Nobody possesses it. There's no such thing as a monopoly on truth. Truth simply is. There are those in this world who will try to convince you that truth is something that is to be possessed, like a car or an entity, a government, a corporation, a desk, a computer. The problem with that lies within the nature of truth simply existing. Within this world, within this life, within this existence, our responsibility is to simply align ourselves to truth. We're not seeking to buy it. In fact, truth can't be bought. Oftentimes it is packaged and it is sold. However, I would subject to you that these packages that are said to contain truth contain the exact opposite. I have an understanding of truth. I don't have an understanding of all truth. I don't believe that within this life, at this particular point in time, that's even possible. And that's a conversation for a different time. But the understanding of the truth that I have is what has led to my happiness. it is my intention as we, ultimately, this is an invitation for you to join me. I didn't invent or create this philosophy. I simply, through a process of examination, dare I say, even through a scientific process of test and retest, try. It's what we do as humans. I firmly believe that humans are born into this world with the ability to discern, to understand, to draw conclusions, to use evidence to determine truth. And I believe that a primary problem with this world is a misunderstanding of truth. What's wrong with this world? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with all of us is the exact same thing. The human species struggles because of one word, a word that has caused wars, a word that has caused death, a word that has rallied forces together to create fear. Because we exist at our fundamental core as a species that needs each other. And there are many voices that will express to you that if I need you and you need me, that is a sign of weakness and an inherent flaw in character, and evidence that makes you better than me, because I need you. The word I'm talking about is dissonance. Maybe the best way to describe, or maybe the best way to explain what dissonance is to tell you what dissonance is not. The opposite of dissonance is a word called harmony. Along with harmony comes peace, contentment, happiness, joy, which I will express to you are emotions and experiences that are exceptionally difficult to explain unless you've lived or experienced what they exactly are. In this, I'm talking about my ability, or even your ability, to describe to somebody born blind in this world what the color red is or looks like. Because my understanding of red and your understanding of red is based on the same concepts and principles. Red like a fire engine, red like an apple, red like a sunset. But for somebody who's born blind, who for whatever reason, the physical abilities of his eyes, her eyes, their eyes, don't have the ability to discern red. So how do you explain that to somebody who has never seen the color, somebody who doesn't have context? Try describing the word sweet without ever having tasted sugar. I'm saying is a difficult concept, a reality of this life, a truth even, that many people in this world believe or think their perception is that they are happy, but they really aren't. Because the path that they are on brings the opposite of happiness. Dissonance is not harmony. Dissonance is a violation of expectation. And in some circumstances, dissonance is even a shattering of expectation. And I use the word violation and I use the word shattering very specifically and very intently because they describe what dissonance really is. Dissonance is meant to describe the stress and the anxiety and even depression that follows cognitive despair or our inability to find understanding in our surroundings and in our environment. Dissonance nearly cost me my life 3 separate times. Because I was classified as not just being broken, because if you're broken, you were something at one particular point in time, right? You take an expensive anything, I don't care what it is. Let's talk about a museum piece, right? One of those Ming Dynasty vases that sits in some museum someplace, and it has immeasurable value. It's even priceless because of its qualities, its beauty, and it is irreplaceable. And the janitor in the middle of the night is doing his job and just trying to provide for his family, and he bumps into that column where this priceless Ming vase is set, and it falls off and it breaks and it shatters. And of course, all sorts of people are all sorts of upset because this expensive, this priceless, this irreplaceable item is now broken. Therefore, its value has been diminished because it no longer is what it was. So a conversation for another day is why is it the janitor's fault? Certainly he's got culpability in it. But why is it the janitor's fault when the vase was placed on a pedestal out in an area where it could be broken? If something is truly that priceless, why do we not protect it? I said before that the dissonance nearly cost my life 3 different times. Because the people who mattered the most to me, the people I needed the most, the people I loved the most, judged me as less than. They didn't even give me a classification of value. And the evidence that surrounded me at the time suggested that they were right. Dissonance seeks to describe the internal conflict that happens within us all. Every human that has ever lived, every human that will ever live upon this planet experiences internal conflict because what is inside of us does not seem to fit what surrounds us. What's wrong with you is the exact same thing that is wrong with me. And what's wrong with me is the exact same thing that is wrong with the people who described my value as worth less. And it doesn't matter if we're talking $1 versus $2. In today's society, $2 is worth more than $1, and so everybody would rather have $2 rather than just one. But that dollar still has value. But only as we perceive it. Because after all, $1 is just made out of paper. But there are other things that are printed on paper that have far more value than a simple dollar. What's wrong with the world? There's a word called dissonance. It's a shattering of expectations. Because as humans, we need each other. But this world is trying so very hard to make that fundamental core need a weakness, a flaw, something that decreases my value, your value, our value. Because if need is a flaw, it is a flaw that every last single one of us possess. Even those who suggest in the first place that it is in fact a flaw. This morning as I was preparing for the day, and I was feeling some frustration because the world does not seem to listen. The world in many regards is blind. They refuse to listen. They keep their eyes shut. They intentionally stumble around in darkness because being wrong has been created into weakness. If you were to take 5 minutes and do a search on some of the most famous people that have ever lived, there's several that come to mind. But I want to isolate on one individual because of the list, I feel like he exemplifies what I am trying to talk about the most. Abraham Lincoln in United States history is described as a hero, is remembered in reverence and greatness because he set the stage which forced racial equality. That's probably another concept for another day, the concept of force. And forcing what is right over what is wrong. Because that's what the American Civil War was. It was a battle of ideals. It was a battle of ideas. very political in nature, and most certainly agendas were present on both sides which had nothing to do with racial equality. However, Abraham Lincoln saw a window open to where he could begin the process, at least in the United States, of where one human could no longer own another human, as if they were a thing. Abraham Lincoln's life was not filled with peace and joy and happiness. He did not rise to his ranks and to his level and to his stature. He didn't come to his place and his position through a pathway of ease. He made many mistakes. Politically speaking, it's actually quite interesting that he was able to obtain the election because he wasn't the most popular politician that ever lived. But that's the very nature of this world. Things have a tendency to come together. Again, speaking again of the United States of America, and that's the reason why we are, because I'm sitting in the United States of America. The revolution, the American Revolution, which brought independence to a series of colonies. Times, events, and seasons came together to the point where that was successful. In contrast, Adolf Hitler just about took over the world. He was doing an excellent job. And then he made some decisions and some choices to shut that down. The world has a tendency, this life has a tendency to find balance. And when enough people need each other, because Abraham Lincoln could not have done what he did by himself. The Allied forces, the United States of America, if we tried to battle Hitler all by ourselves, I don't believe that we would have been successful. When the world unites on principles of truth, the world has always risen successful. But the opposite also exists. When the world unites on principles of falsehood, destruction, death, tyranny, dissonance is the aftermath. There are many who will argue that what I am saying right now is too simple, that it can't exist, it doesn't exist. But I have found simplicity in life, and I have also found some of the hardest things that I have ever had to do have also been the most simple to understand. Like recognizing my value when everyone around me It does not. It doesn't decrease my value. The fact that I can't recognize it, the fact that you can't recognize it, doesn't change who I am. But the dissonance inside of when I start to believe the naysayers, the shattering of expectations in every aspect lead from the research that I've found lead to three paths really. Dissonance creates anxiety. Dissonance creates depression. And the increase of anxiety and depression decreases quality of life. And most people describe quality of life as a measure of happiness. The term is called exaltation, and it is described by the Oxford Dictionary as a state of extreme happiness. But yet there are people in this world who will tell you that that's not possible. In fact, happiness is impossible. Truth is impossible. That, let's just face it, in this world, you are less than for whatever reason. I mean, throughout history, humans have called this desire, this need to place themselves higher than others. I mean, it doesn't matter what name you give it. It doesn't matter what leader embraces it. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we spend far too much time focusing on what makes us different and not enough time focusing on what makes us the same. What matters is that this world is seeking to separate individuals, because when I am left alone, I am weaker than when I stand next to you. And there are people who seek to capitalize on that. There are people who seek to lead through force and fear. Because dissonance causes them to believe, to conclude that they have the right to do what they do. How is that possible then? Because of dissonance of my life, if the circumstances and the environment in which I am raised, if all of the evidence points that I have no value, I fight against that. Because at my very core, I seem to recognize and realize that I do have value. But yet my entire environment is teaching me otherwise. Some people seek fame, fortune. Some people amass volumes of work and literature, and they write things, and they do things. That's all a gigantic sign of, look at me, I have value. They're screaming to the world, look at me, I have value. Because I've done this. Look at me, I have value because I've done that. Look at me, I have value because I possess this. Look at me, I have value. But your value and my value is a constant. It doesn't change. Just like truth doesn't change, it's a constant. The only thing that changes in this world are perceptions of what is right and perceptions of what is wrong. And there is no one group of people who is causing the destruction that is present other than the human species as a whole, because we have failed to come together for the right reasons. We have failed to discern truth. We have taught ourselves that truth is not real, that it does not exist. We have taught ourselves that it is possible that one person is better than another. We have taught ourselves that it's okay for me to hurt you. So, instead of doing my homework, because it'll get done, instead of sitting in this chair feeling frustrated, there's not a damn thing that I can do, I'm going to do something. I'm going to share with you what I know to be true. And this knowledge came at a tremendous price. Tremendous sacrifice. Tremendous pain. The cost was great. And it nearly cost me my life. But it is my intention to share with you what I know to be true, so that we can become stronger, and so that we can make this world a better place. Not just the city where I live, not just my town. I'm talking about the entire world, because that is my vision. I am trying to save the world, and I am asking for your help.